we are talking about more strategies to use when you're trying to get your picky eater to eat. This is part of a series that I have been working on about food and kids, all based from some therapy that we have been doing, all revolving around eating. Hey you guys, it's Christina from the Purple Alphabet and welcome back to the channel. Around here we do educational activities that you can use with your kids to learn through play, and some hauls and giveaways and a little bit about parenting. I'm not the parenting expert, but I can at least share some experiences that I've had. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of that. This series is about eating and eating with kids and picky eaters and kids who don't eat. I have other parts of the series. Part 1 talked about why we chose to go to eating therapy and the different types of eating therapy we tried, plus a little bit about what you can expect from eating therapy. Part 2 talked about the process during eating therapy and routines and belief systems that we hold in order to get started on learning and exploring new foods. This video is going to go in a little bit more in depth about the techniques that I learned in eating therapy that I still use right now at home, even though eating therapy is already done. If this information has been beneficial to you, make sure to leave me a comment down below. And also, if you've tried any of the things I've mentioned, I would love to hear that feedback as well. I want to make sure that this series is kind of beneficial to you guys because I really want to share the information that I've learned because it's helped me so much. In the last video, I talked about routines and a little bit about the language and beliefs that we have coming to the table. And those are probably the biggest chunk of information that I took away. So I still use those constantly. And just to refresh you, it was talking about establishing a routine that you could follow all the time with your kids, or as much as possible, because we all live our lives, but it really helps to establish a routine so your child feels comfortable in order to try something new, like a new food. And then we talked about some of the belief systems that we have as parents that we had probably when we were growing up, like don't play with your food, you can't leave the table until you are done, make sure to eat all of your vegetables, those kinds of belief systems, and how they kind of hinder your child because it feels kind of threatening, like you have to eat this, and as a result changing our language and how we respond and talk about food. So I talked a little bit about preferred and non-preferred instead of likes and don't likes, and using that language. Or maybe something has a really bad smell, so instead of saying a bad smell versus good smell, maybe saying a big smell versus small smell. Those things are a really great solid foundation to build upon if you're working on some of these eating principles and techniques. One of the first techniques that you should try, and I highly recommend, is to grocery shop with your child. I told you before that we would bring in the food for our kids to explore during the therapy. So all the parents would bring in something that was related to the theme for that week. And as part of that, I always had my daughter go to the grocery store with me right before therapy so we could shop and pick out the things that we were going to bring. And we kind of had some guidelines to stay in. So if it was pizza week, we know we needed some ingredients for pizza and we were assigned those ingredients. But where the choice came in is she could pick if she wanted to bring in yellow cheese or white cheese. And so she had an option and she could feel like she was part of that. Now I'd have to admit, at first she was like, cheese? No, I don't want anything to do with it. I don't want it. And she'd whine and complain. But over time, as I kept on including her in the shopping process, she eventually got to the point where she would pick which one she wanted to bring in and was proud of it. So when you go grocery shopping, consider including your child and making the choices of which one to get. Which vegetables should we get? Which apples should we pick out? And start including them in that process so they feel a little bit more ownership over those items they bring home, even if they're not preferred items. The second technique is including them in your cooking. Although it might be a little bit more difficult if you're in a rush, if there's things that can get way messier than you want them to be, if you include your child in cooking, they might even feel so inclined to actually try it or play with it or explore it, as we say in therapy. They have a little bit more ownership. Doesn't mean that you have to expect them to actually eat it, but involving them in the process lets them see how a food starts at one point and gets to another point. So maybe your child does like cheese on pizza, but they don't like it in shreds. But if they can see the process of it being from shreds to cooking and how it changed from when it cooked to get to the end as a pizza, it might open up their eyes to see the process of how food can change during cooking. So include your kids in cooking, even if it's just, you know, stirring something or adding something in. Depending on your age and their skill level, you can kind of vary what they can do. The fourth technique is to serve things in family style. So instead of putting everything on a plate for your child already, put it all in the middle and let them serve themselves. Maybe they're not going to serve themselves those mashed potatoes, but maybe they will serve you. And it's just a part of the process making them feel included and that the meal is a very important part of the day. day. Once again, these are little baby steps that are gonna help in the long picture. So serving family style is a little less threatening, and you want to encourage them to serve or to serve other people. The next technique is to always include a preferred or non-preferred item for their mealtime. This gives them an opportunity to explore something that's different, but they don't feel as threatened because they have something that they actually like and will eat. The exposure is really, really important. It takes like so many more exposures than you would think for them to actually accept a new food, or explore a new food. So even if it just sits there, that little spoonful of macaroni and cheese sits there on their plate and they don't do anything, then in our house, that's a win, because before it wouldn't go on their plate. Then maybe the next time you can encourage them to make something out of it. I cannot tell you how many times in eating therapy that they were building things, they were making things, which leads me on to the next tip, which is to actually play with your food, which is mind-blowing to me that I never really even thought about this. Instead of using those mashed potatoes as mashed potatoes, can you make a castle out of them? Can you take some pretzel sticks and make into a little building? Can you break the pretzel sticks into make smaller little walls? Oh, the pretzel's not sticking to the mashed potatoes. I need to use my tongue glue. Lick the pretzel and put it on. So therefore, it might seem a little bit gross to you, and it was a little bit off-putting, but actually putting that food onto their tongue is one step closer to them actually eating it. It's a really, really tricky thing, but it actually worked for some of the kids in the therapy. So they would call it tongue glue, and they use that for anything. I need some tongue glue. And before you knew it, the kids are putting items that they would never eat onto their tongue to get that tongue glue so they could stick it onto something else that they were making in their food creation. The ways to play with food can be numerous. So just really think about how you can explore food so it just makes them actually touch it. I really like this next technique because it was kind of eye-opening for me, and that is to get that food somewhere on their mouth in whatever way you could. And they did this in a variety of ways. Maybe it was just blowing it off your hand. So they placed the food here. Can you blow it? Oh, that's great. Maybe they would be kissing it goodbye. Kissing it goodbye, and the food would go into a discard bowl. Maybe it's putting it in your mouth and blowing it into the trash can. Maybe it's taking it for the tongue glue and trying it on your tongue. Maybe it's hiding it in your mouth somewhere and trying to make someone else guess where it is. Is it in this cheek, this cheek? Is it under your tongue? Is it on top of your tongue? Did you swallow it and it's in your tummy? By doing this process, I couldn't believe the things my child had put in their mouth to play these games. I mean, it was just incredible. As you work your way up that little ladder and you increase the time that it has in their mouth, it's also awakening the senses and getting your child used to it. So when they would play the game where you would put food in your mouth and try to find where it is, you can kind of play a little bit coy. Is it over there? Is it over there? The longer it was in the mouth, you were kind of stalling as a parent or as a therapist, the better. One of the greatest tips I have for you is doing a food chain. So kind of similar from looking to touching to feeling to tongue glue to having it in your mouth to swallowing. That whole process would be taking a piece of food that you know your child prefers, altering it a little bit, slightly, into making it into a new food and working off of it. So let's say, for example, your child likes French fries, but they don't like chicken nuggets. So maybe if you take a French fry and combine it with something they do like, maybe it's ketchup, and you show that you can dip it into ketchup. Well, what else can we dip in ketchup? Can we take the chicken nugget and dip that in ketchup too? And try stretching your food that way in a different variation. One technique that I've already mentioned before in my restaurant kits is tracking your child's progress. So in the restaurant kit, I put a little piece of paper. It's a chart. It's actually meant for reading books, and it has little spaces to put stickers on for every time you read a new book. So I'm taking that to the restaurants in my restaurant kit. So anytime my child tries a new food off of anybody's plate at the table, she can put a new sticker on there. Where I got that from is from therapy, because in therapy they keep track of everything that you have done with new foods. If you looked at it, smelled it, tried it, tasted it, swallowed it. So the concept is very similar, is rewarding them so you can track and show them, hey, look at all these great new foods you've tried, and they can have a sense of accomplishment. I hope one of those techniques is something that you can try at home and work with it. Let me know what you think. Make sure to click subscribe to see more videos like this and give me a thumbs up to show your love.